Okay, so today I wanted to ask you guys about Billboard at large. What rules would you like them to implement to just make the charts better and everything? What changes that you think needs to be done? And the main thing that I wanted to ask about today is, do you think that Billboard should change their rules in regards to the Hot 100 and allowing album tracks to chart? I believe in the UK they changed it to where only 3 songs from an album can chart to prevent album bombing and stuff like that, which I can definitely understand. And I just wanted to know, would you guys be here for that or are you against that, and why? As we know, last year Taylor Swift released her album Midnights, and the entire top 10 was occupied with songs from the album, and that's the first time that that's ever happened. And so that was a huge record for her to break, and that kind of is what spearheaded the conversation, I will say. And other artists are definitely doing this as well, but I think it becomes a problem because it's like they're in the chart for like a week or two and then they completely fall out. Like, you wouldn't know all the songs unless you were a Taylor Swift fan like myself. So then it just really changes the conversation because, like, in the 60s, for example, you couldn't have all that stuff happening. You had to officially release a song as a single, and if you didn't, it wasn't going to chart. And maybe that's why a lot of the songs from back then are so memorable. When you just have everything being able to chart and everything, and then 2 weeks later, no one knows who it is, I think that might kind of be a problem. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, because I think that that's really interesting. But is there any other changes that you'd like them to do to just make everything a little bit more fair, make everything a lot more reasonable? Because I remember there was an entire thing about BTS and their fans. They were doing a lot of like chart manipulation, I feel, every time that they release a single, because I just feel like, how can you have the number one song in the world and nobody knows it besides your fans? So they kind of cracked down on like the digital sales and stuff from that standpoint. I think that it has gotten better. And of course, all fan bases are going to do that to a certain extent. If I like an artist, I'm going to buy a song, right? And so I just want to know, where do you think it goes too far? Because I think with a lot of these rules, it's like the artists are definitely manipulating that. They're releasing so many different versions of a song because they want it to chart. And with the way Billboard's rules are, it's benefiting them. And what I hate, and a rule that I think Billboard really needs to change, is the whole thing with the remixes. I have a whole video on this, but basically the reason why the remix is different now is because of J-Lo. And the remixes back then, it would basically be a completely different song, different production, different vocal delivery, all that stuff. And it would have a lot of the core roots to it, though, at least lyrically, but they changed that to where you can't do that. So if you notice, a lot of artists, they release remixes now, and they don't change it very much. They just throw a verse in there because they're not really allowed to if they want the song to chart. They could release a whole different song, but that's a whole different chart entry. So I would like them to change that rule. I think that that's something that they need to do, and just crack down on the entire thing with like remixes and how many of those can chart, and the things with the original and stuff like that. Because I think it gets to a point where a lot of these artists, it seems like the way that they release their music and the songs that they're releasing, it's all about charting. And that's what really bothers me, because you're an artist and you're supposed to care about the art. It's nice to have things to be successful, but when you're kind of playing to it and that, and chart manipulation and all that kind of stuff, and payola, I don't think any of that stuff is right. And so I think that's definitely something that we have to fix. I mean, just look at what Taylor Swift did with Anti-Hero. You release different versions every single week to keep a song at number one. That's not organic. And I dragged her for that at the time, and I still will, because it just was weird. Like, I don't know why Taylor Swift is so chart obsessed despite all the success that she's had. She does well in the Billboard 200, which is the albums chart. The singles chart, I think she's doing better now than she was a couple years ago, but just all the different tactics that she uses, I'm not here for. I think she just kind of willed it to 39 cents to get it to go number one. And it's like, why are we doing all that? I think Billboard needs to be more thoughtful in the rules that they make and just have everything a little bit more organic, because I want to know the top 10 a year from now. Like, sometimes I see it from like 2013, 2014. Now I'm like, wow, these are all great songs, I know them. And you can't really see that for now. You might know a song or two, and it's just like, I think TikTok kind of played a role in that for how it was able to help songs go viral. I think that's changed with the dispute with UMG. But also with Billboard, I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about the entire thing with bundling, right? Because it was like, you could buy a CD and you could buy a hoodie with it and now account for the album. Or sometimes artists would just find creative ways to give you their album with whatever you were buying. Billboard changed that rule, and then they were just gonna count, when you actually bought the album and stuff, when you actually streamed the album. Then they changed it back because nobody can sell nowadays. So do you think a lot of the things that Billboard does now is to kind of engage the audience per se and have people still invested? Or I want to know your thoughts on that too. Let me know what you guys think of the thing that I mentioned at the top of the video with the whole album bombing. Do you want them to change it or not? And my commentary, what do you think of that? And are there any rules that you think that Billboard should implement just to make it a lot more organic and better for the listener overall? Do you not really care about the charts? Do you not think that it matters? And let's have that conversation.